Long before the first coins were ever struck, the people of ancient Persia had a sophisticated way of doing business. They did not use money as we know it today, with round metal discs stamped with a ruler's face. Instead, their economy was built on a system of barter and weight. Imagine a bustling marketplace in a city like Susa or Ecbatana. A merchant wanting to buy grain might offer a potter some of his finely woven textiles in exchange. This system worked well for local trade, but for larger, more complex transactions, something more was needed. This is where precious metals, especially silver, played a crucial role. Silver was highly valued across the ancient Near East for its beauty and rarity. It became a standard measure of value, a reliable way to price goods and services. Instead of exchanging a cow for a cart, a merchant could determine the value of both items in silver. The silver was not in the form of coins. It was used in different shapes and sizes, such as bars, rings, or even simple unformed lumps. This raw silver was often called hack silver, as pieces were literally hacked off a larger block to get the right weight for a payment. This made trade more flexible and allowed for commerce over much greater distances. To ensure fairness, every transaction involving silver required a careful process of weighing. Merchants carried small, often beautifully crafted sets of balance scales and standardized weights. When a deal was agreed, the buyer would place pieces of silver on one side of the scale and the agreed-upon weights on the other. This continued until the scales balanced perfectly. This act of weighing was central to economic life. It was a public and trusted ritual that guaranteed both the buyer and the seller were getting a fair deal. This system, based on the weight of silver, laid the essential groundwork for the monetary revolution that was to come. This method of using silver by weight was common throughout the vast Median and later, the Achaemenid Persian Empire. It connected diverse regions, from the mountains of modern-day Iran to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia. While it was a practical system, it had its limitations. Each piece of silver had to be weighed for every single transaction, which could be slow and cumbersome. There was also the constant need to test the purity of the metal. A dishonest trader might try to pass off a silver-plated piece of bronze as pure silver. The world was ready for a more convenient and secure form of money, and the solution was already taking shape, not far to the west. The revolutionary idea of coinage did not begin in Persia. It was born in a neighboring kingdom to the west called Lydia, located in what is now western Turkey. Around the 7th century BC, the Lydians came up with a brilliant innovation. They took small, standardized lumps of a natural gold and silver alloy called electrum and stamped them with a symbol. This symbol, often a lion's head, acted as a guarantee from the issuing authority, likely the king of Lydia. This mark certified both the weight and the purity of the metal. For the first time, a piece of metal had a guaranteed value just by looking at it. This Lydian invention transformed trade. A merchant no longer needed to bring scales to the market for every transaction. They could simply count the coins. This made commerce faster, easier, and more secure. The idea of coinage quickly spread from Lydia to the Greek city-states along the coast of the Aegean Sea. These cities began producing their own coins, usually made of silver, each stamped with a unique emblem representing their city, such as an owl for Athens or a turtle for Aegina. These early coins were not just economic tools, they were powerful symbols of civic identity and independence. The worlds of Lydia and Persia collided in the middle of the 6th century BC. The great Persian king, Cyrus the Great, conquered the Lydian kingdom and its wealthy king, Croesus. With this conquest, the Achaemenid Empire absorbed not only the lands of Lydia, but also its advanced monetary system. Suddenly, the Persian rulers were in control of the very place where coins were invented. They saw firsthand how these small, stamped pieces of metal could streamline an economy. The Persians continued to mint the Lydian gold and silver coins for a time, observing how they worked. The Persian kings, being wise administrators, understood the potential of this new technology. An empire as vast as theirs, stretching from India to Egypt, required a unified and efficient system for collecting taxes, paying soldiers, and funding massive building projects. The old system of weighing silver for every payment was too slow for the needs of such a powerful state. The Lydian concept of a state-guaranteed coin offered the perfect solution. It was a tool that could not only boost the economy, but also project the power and authority of the king across his immense and diverse realm. The stage was set for Persia to create its own imperial currency. Around 520 BC, the Persian king Darius I, also known as Darius the Great, took the monumental step of introducing the first truly imperial Persian coinage. He created two types of coins, a gold coin called the Daric, and a silver coin called the Siglos. The name Siglos is believed to be derived from the ancient Semitic word for shekel, which was a unit of weight long before it was a coin. This choice of name shows a clever connection to the older familiar system of weighing silver, making the new coin easier for people to understand and accept. The Siglos was a direct replacement for the old system of using hack silver. The design of the Siglos was simple, yet powerful and instantly recognizable. The front of Tradiwakun Tam or Donberbar Modast Ostem Meiberspies Base of the coin showed the figure of the Persian great king. He is depicted in a running or kneeling posture, holding a bow in his left hand and a spear in his right. This image was not a realistic portrait of Darius himself, but rather a representation of the royal office, the king as a mighty warrior and protector of the empire. The back or reverse of the coin was much simpler. It featured a rough rectangular punch mark, which was a result of the minting process where the metal was hammered into the die. The Siglos was carefully made to a consistent weight standard. Each coin weighed approximately 5.6 grams, and 20 sigloi were equal in value to 1 gold daric. This created a bimetallic system, where both gold and silver coins had a fixed relationship, making large and small transactions much simpler. The purity of the silver was also very high, often over 90%, which made the coins trusted throughout the empire and beyond. This reliability was crucial. It meant that a merchant in Babylon could accept a siglos with the same confidence as a soldier being paid in Egypt. This new silver coin was more than just money. It was a piece of imperial propaganda that could be held in the hand. Every siglos carried the image of the Persian king, a constant reminder of his power and authority, no matter how far one was from the capital. The king's image as an archer warrior sent a clear message: he was the defender of order and the guarantor of peace and stability within his vast domains. The creation of the siglos was a masterful move by Darius, combining economic necessity with a powerful political statement that would resonate for centuries. The primary reason for creating the siglos and its gold counterpart, the daric, was to establish a unified and efficient economic system across the sprawling Achaemenid Empire. Before Darius, the empire was a patchwork of different regions, each with its own local customs for trade and taxation. Some used weighted silver, others used local coins from Greek or Lydian cities, and many relied on barter. This made managing the empire's finances incredibly complex. The central government needed a standardized currency to collect taxes, pay its massive army, and fund its ambitious building programs, such as the construction of the great palaces at Persepolis and Susa. The siglos provided the perfect solution. As the official silver currency of the empire, it became the standard unit for most everyday transactions and for paying taxes. Provincial governors, known as satraps, were required to collect tribute from their regions and send it to the king. Much of this tribute was now paid in sigloi. This created a consistent flow of wealth from the provinces to the imperial center. The coins were also used to pay the salaries of soldiers, administrators, and the skilled artisans from across the world who worked on the king's grand projects. This system ensured loyalty and kept the machinery of the empire running smoothly. The introduction of the siglos had a profound impact on trade. While local currencies were still used in some regions, especially in the Greek cities of Western Anatolia, the siglos became the dominant coin for inter-regional commerce. A merchant traveling from Egypt to Bactria could now use the same currency throughout his journey, eliminating the need to constantly exchange different types of money or weigh silver. This made long-distance trade faster, safer, and more profitable. The coin's high silver content and the king's guarantee made it a trusted currency even outside the empire's borders, further boosting the Persian economy. Ultimately, the siglos was a powerful symbol of imperial unity. It was one of the few objects that was common to all subjects of the great king, whether they were Egyptians, Babylonians, Greeks, or Bactrians. Holding a siglos was holding a direct link to the central authority of the king. It represented a shared economic identity that helped to bind the diverse peoples of the empire together. The coin was not just a tool for the economy, it was an instrument of political cohesion. By creating the siglos, Darius the Great did not just reform the economy, he strengthened the very foundations of his empire. The production of the Siglos was largely centered in the western part of the Achaemenid Empire, with the main mint believed to have been located at Sardis in Lydia. This location made perfect sense. Sardis was the former capital of the Lydian kingdom, where coinage was invented, and it had a long tradition of skilled mint workers. It was also strategically located to supply currency to the western satrapies, where coin-based economies were already well established. From this center, the newly minted sigloi were distributed throughout the empire, following the pathways of soldiers, tax collectors, and merchants. Archaeological discoveries have confirmed the wide circulation of the Siglos. Hordes of these silver coins have been unearthed at sites across the former Achaemenid Empire and even beyond its borders. Significant finds have been made in modern-day Turkey, Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. One of the most famous discoveries is the Apadana hoard, found buried in the foundations of the Apadana Palace at Persepolis. This hoard contained both sigloi and coins from other parts of the ancient world, showing how different currencies circulated together and were collected by the imperial treasury as tribute. These finds provide a physical map of the empire's economic network. The spread of the Siglos was not always uniform. In the eastern provinces of the empire, in places like Bactria and Sogdiana, modern Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, the transition to a coin-based economy was slower. Here, the traditional system of using weighted silver bullion persisted for a longer time, often alongside the new coins. However, the Siglos was still present, used primarily for official state business, such as paying troops stationed on the empire's frontier. The coin acted as a bridge between the highly monetized economies of the West and the bullion-based economies of the East. The influence of the Siglos extended beyond the lands controlled by the Great King. The coin's reliability and high silver content made it a desirable currency for international trade. It has been found in hoards as far away as the Danube River Valley in Europe and in parts of India, areas that were never part of the Achaemenid Empire. This demonstrates that the Siglos was not just an imperial currency, but also a major international trade coin of its time. It became a recognized and trusted standard of value across much of the ancient world, a testament to the economic power and stability of the Persian Empire under Darius and his successors. The era of the Achaemenid Siglos came to an end with the conquests of Alexander the Great in the 330s BC. As Alexander swept across the Persian Empire, he captured vast amounts of Persian treasure, including huge stockpiles of darics and sigloi. Much of this treasure was melted down and recoined into his own currency. Alexander introduced a new silver coin that would become the dominant currency of the age, the tetradrachm. This coin featured the head of the hero Heracles on the front and the god Zeus, seated on a throne on the back. It was minted to a different weight standard, the Attic standard, which was already widely used in Greece. After Alexander's death, his vast empire was divided among his generals who founded their own dynasties. The largest of these was the Seleucid Empire, which controlled much of the former Persian heartland, including Iran and Mesopotamia. The Seleucid kings continued to mint silver tetradrachms in the style of Alexander, but they soon began to replace the image of Heracles with portraits of themselves. This was a significant change. For the first time in this region, coins regularly featured realistic portraits of living rulers, a practice that would influence coinage for millennia. The Greek artistic style and lettering on these coins spread Hellenistic culture deep into Asia. In the middle of the 3rd century BC, a new Iranian power emerged, the Parthians. Originating from the northeast of Iran, the Parthians gradually pushed the Seleucids out and established their own empire. The Parthians also minted silver coins, known as drachms, which were similar in weight to the Seleucid coins. Early Parthian coins showed the king wearing a soft cap, but over time the style evolved. Later coins depicted the king wearing an elaborate tiara and featured a seated archer on the reverse, a clear nod to their nomadic heritage and a symbolic link back to the archer king of the Achaemenid Siglos. The inscriptions were in Greek, showing the lasting influence of the Hellenistic period. The Parthian silver drach became the workhorse of the economy for nearly 500 years. It was minted in vast quantities at numerous mints across the empire, from Mesopotamia to the eastern frontiers. The artistic quality of the coins varied over the centuries, but they remained a constant and recognizable feature of life along the Silk Road. The journey of silver coinage in Iran, which had begun with the simple, powerful design of the Siglos, had now passed through Greek and Hellenistic phases. A new chapter was about to begin with the rise of another great Persian dynasty, the Sasanians, who would once again transform the look and feel of Iran's silver money. In the 3rd century AD, the Parthian Empire was overthrown by a new dynasty, the Sasanians, who saw themselves as the true successors to the Achaemenid Persians. They sought to revive the glory of the First Persian Empire, and this ambition was clearly reflected in their coinage. The Sasanians created a new and distinctive silver coin, also called a drachm, but it was very different from the Parthian coins that came before it. The Sasanian drachm was thinner and broader, creating a larger canvas for the artists to display their craft. It was a coin designed to impress and to project a new vision of Iranian kingship. The front of the Sasanian silver drachm featured a magnificent and highly detailed portrait of the king, in profile. Each ruler was shown wearing a unique and elaborate crown, often adorned with symbols like wings, stars, or globes. These intricate crowns were so specific to each king that they are often used by historians and numismatists to identify the ruler on the coin. The king's portrait was not just a likeness, it was a symbol of his divine right to rule, his kfarena or royal glory. Around the portrait was an inscription in the Pahlavi script, the language of Sasanian Iran, naming the king and his titles. The reverse side of the Sasanian drachm was just as symbolic. It almost always depicted a Zoroastrian fire altar, the central symbol of the state religion. The sacred fire is shown burning on the altar, often with 2 attendants standing on either side, guarding it. This design served as a powerful statement of the Sasanian dynasty's commitment to Zoroastrianism and the close link between the monarchy and the temple. The combination of the king's portrait on the front and the fire altar on the back sent a clear message. The king's power was protected by divine authority, and he, in turn, was the protector of the true faith. The Sasanian silver drachm was produced in enormous quantities and became one of the most important trade coins of late antiquity. Its consistent weight and high silver purity made it trusted from Europe to China. In fact, its design was so influential that it was copied by neighboring peoples, including some of the early Islamic caliphs who simply replaced the king's name with their own in Arabic. The Sasanian drachm represents a high point in the art of Persian coinage, a perfect fusion of political propaganda, religious symbolism, and exquisite craftsmanship that revived a distinctly Iranian identity in silver. The Sasanian Empire fell to the Arab conquests in the mid-7th century AD, marking a major turning point in Iranian history and in the story of its coinage. The new Islamic rulers, the Umayyad Caliphate, initially did not introduce their own coins. Instead, they continued to use Sasanian silver drachms, which were already familiar and trusted. These early coins, known as Arab Sasanian coins, are fascinating hybrids. They kept the Sasanian design, including the portrait of the Sasanian king and the fire altar, but added short Arabic inscriptions, such as Bismillah, or in the name of God, in the margins. This transitional phase lasted for several decades until the Caliph Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan instituted a major coinage reform around 698 AD. He replaced all coins bearing images with a new, purely Islamic design. The new silver coin, called the dirham, contained no pictures at all. Instead, both sides were filled with inscriptions in the Arabic Kufic script. These inscriptions were passages from the Quran and statements of faith, such as the Shahada. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. This aniconic design, which avoided human or animal figures, became the standard for Islamic coinage for centuries. The Islamic dirham, minted to a specific weight and purity, became the backbone of the economy throughout the vast Islamic world, from Spain to Central Asia. In Iran, various dynasties that ruled under the Caliphate, and later as independent kingdoms, minted their own dirhams. These included the Samanids, Buyids, and Ghaznavids. While they all followed the basic aniconic format, they often added the names of local rulers and mint locations, providing valuable historical information. The artistry of the calligraphy on these coins reached incredible heights, turning each coin into a miniature work of religious and political art. This tradition of silver coinage continued through the medieval period in Iran, under dynasties like the Seljuks and the Ilkhans, the Mongol rulers. While designs changed, and sometimes Mongol rulers even reintroduced portraits, the silver coin remained a crucial part of economic life. The journey of silver money in Iran, which started with the Achaemenid king as a warrior on the Siglos, had transformed completely. The coin was no longer a carrier of a king's image but a carrier of sacred text. It was a powerful illustration of the profound cultural and religious shift that had reshaped the Iranian world. The silver Siglos holds a special place in the history of Iran and the world. It was more than just the first official silver coin of the Persian Empire. It was a revolutionary tool of statecraft. By creating a standardized, reliable currency, Darius the Great was able to unify the economy of the largest empire the world had yet seen. The Siglos streamlined the collection of taxes, simplified the payment of a massive army, and fostered trade across 3 continents. It was an essential component in the administrative machinery that allowed the Achaemenid Empire to function and flourish for over 2 centuries. The coin's success laid the foundation for monetary systems in the region for thousands of years. For historians and archaeologists, the Siglos is an invaluable artifact. It is a primary source of information, a small object that tells a big story about Achaemenid power, economy, and ideology. The consistent image of the great king as a warrior archer provides insight into how the Persian rulers wanted to be seen by their subjects as powerful protectors of order and justice. The discovery of Siglos and archaeological sites from Egypt to Afghanistan helps us map the economic connections and political influence of the empire. These coins are tangible pieces of evidence that bring the ancient world to life, allowing us to trace the flow of money, power, and people. Today, the Siglos is highly prized by numismatists and collectors of ancient artifacts. Each coin is a miniature work of art and a direct physical link to a pivotal moment in human history. Owning a Siglos is like holding a piece of the world of Cyrus, Darius, and Xerxes. Collectors appreciate the variations in the coin's design over the 2 centuries it was minted, with subtle changes in the style of the king's depiction. The crude punchmark on the reverse, a remnant of the ancient minting process, adds to its character and authenticity, reminding us that each coin was struck by hand over 2,500 years ago. In conclusion, the journey of the Siglos is the story of a powerful idea. It began with the simple need for a better way to trade than weighing lumps of silver. It was realized through the genius of Darius the Great, who transformed a Lydian invention into an instrument of imperial power. The Siglos unified a diverse empire, projected the king's authority, and became a trusted currency across the ancient world. Though it was eventually replaced by other coins, its legacy endured. It set a precedent for how states could use currency to manage their economies and project their identity, a principle that remains just as relevant today. The Siglos is, and always will be, a monumental chapter in the long and fascinating history of money.